what you do.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar session. I'm your man, Tyler McNamer.
And I'm Jody McNamer, otherwise known as Tyler's dad.
All right, and we are here to give a webinar. What we're mainly all about is learning how to make autism much more workable, and that's that is our mission. So a little bit of an introduction, just real quick. So name's Tyler McNamer. I'm the author of two really proud books. I mean, I'm really passionate about these: Population 1, Autism, Adversity, and It Will Succeed, and Becoming One, Autism, Adolescence, and a Transition to Adulthood. The difference between these two books is the first book, Population 1, is all about having autism in the first-person point of view, going from childhood all the way to high school. And Becoming One is all about leaving high school and becoming an adult for someone who has autism. So these are just the basic point of views on what it's like to have it, and full of strategies on what worked for me, what worked not only for what worked for me, but also worked for all of us.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the books is that Tyler, ultimately, Population 1 started as a high school project because Tyler was desperate to have other people understand him. And what ended up being just a high school project because he was absolutely desperate. We'll talk about that a little bit, about teen depression and what ultimately ended up being now, I think Population 1 has sold 110,000 copies worldwide, been on the Amazon bestseller list in the Autism Asperger's category. We're here to share the information information about the framework that we used in order to create for Tyler to be able to take himself from a nonverbal, just speaking single words at 6 years old to finding his sentences at 12, and then now literally speaking in front of tens of thousands of people, both online and offline. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to cover 5 main topics.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to cover 5 main topics, and we will do our best to cover them in based of accuracy and time too. So we'll do our we'll do our very best to try to stay on topic. So the 5 topics, specific things we're going to talk about. Number 1 is acceptance. Learn to manage your child with autism rather than to fix them. Number 2 is child's perspective. Why do they do this? And we're going to show examples of why certain things happen. Number 3 is effective techniques. This will be a lot of fun, so we'll have to think really hard on effective techniques that works, not just for kids who have autism, but works for those who care for children with autism. Number 4 is social acceptance. Find supportive friends for children and also for you. And finally, number 5 that we are definitely going to cover is self-care. The importance of validating your personal efforts, and that's what we're going to be covering today for these 5 topics. So without further ado, let's get started.
Yeah. So you'll also see on the right hand side of your screen is a chat bar. Now we've set the chat to private, so we have literally, already hundreds of comments coming in. Thank you very, very much for that as well. Hello from Chicago and from Washington State and Ohio and Alabama, Argentina, California, Massachusetts, Ashburn, Virginia. So again, thank you very much for spending some time with us.
Feels like I'm traveling already.
That's right. We'll make it very, very worth your while. This is an interactive session, so I would ask that you go ahead and put your comments in the chat, questions that you have, and we'll try to incorporate them, into our discussion. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, let's talk about acceptance. As a father, reading Tyler's book, when he allowed me to read, he came to me at 17 years old and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm writing a book." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great, Tyler. Can I read it?" And he's like, "Well, it's just not quite ready yet." And so a year later, I think you allowed me to read it. And what for me as a father, and quite frankly, it's kind of humbling, is that I found out things about my son that I never knew. And a lot of that was because, especially when he was young, he just didn't have the ability to talk or express those things. And, that created a lot of frustration. But as he entered into his teen years and 12, 13, 14 years old, he really did become desperate for that acceptance. So maybe you can share a little bit about, as you started to become aware, like what age did you find out that you had autism? What was that like for you? Mm-hmm. And then, how did that whole search for acceptance go for you?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, for the longest time, I knew I was different. I knew there was something going on. I'd been doing things that no other kids would be doing, that kind of thing. And I knew I was different. I was definitely known as what they would call the oddball of the class, and it was true. I was quite the odd one of the bunch. It wasn't until I was 13 that I fully discovered all about the whole topic of autism, and it was, as soon as I discovered that, something kind of just hit, like a rocket, basically, hit too. That says, something along the lines of, "Oh, so this is why people look at me so differently," or "This is why people look at me so strangely." And all kind of thing. It's because of whatever this is. And I'll be honest with you, I got pretty angry about that. Just a flood full of emotions, basically. Anger, frustration, which is kind of the same thing. Sadness, desperation, and just didn't know what to do. So the way that we handled all these emotions was we handled them in the safest way and the most healthiest way that we could. And one of them happens to be boxing. We at the gym, learned how to box at a young age to get all the aggression out, that kind of thing, and that was really helpful too. And then it was Aikido, which is a type of martial arts that we did, and also Kendo, which is the art of swordplay, where I used bamboo sticks, and those things were really heavy. And the reason why we did all this is because simply to just get all of that aggression out, and in the most healthiest kind of way possible, to feel like you can punch as hard as you can and as fast as you can while doing the boxing. And it was definitely really helpful in that sort of way too, to get all that out. And then simply just talking about it, because when I was a teen, I did be able to speak in words and was able to express those thoughts, but I still had my self-proclaimed mission. That was to finish this book and try to fit in with the rest of the group in high school.
Yeah, and I think that from a parent's perspective, acceptance is one of those things where you try to find a social circle for your child. And especially with autism, it's very difficult to interpret all the social nuances and things. So by enrolling Tyler in different classes where they were really concentrating more on the topic or doing a specific activity versus concentrating on having conversations, you had that one point of commonality. And I think that's a really big thing.
Absolutely.
When we take a look at acceptance as well, acceptance oftentimes starts, when our children are very young. And Tyler, you kind of tell a story about how, you progressed as far as acceptance in, grade school, and then it went to middle or primary school, then high school. Like, how did acceptance change for you, through that process?
Oh yeah, we have yet to talk about that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes me think quite hard on this. So acceptance to me was like in elementary school, I feel like that was like one of the easiest things of acceptance because, just think about it. You're you're young, you're a child, you're carefree, and all you can really think about is playtime, and kids, they don't really think about the whole autism thing. They just see other kids as simply other kids, really.
Yeah.
It's like there's really no need to think harder than that than just seeing other kids and say, oh sweet, now we got a full team for baseball, and that was basically it too, because it's like anyone we can pick. It doesn't matter if you have autism or you're blind or deaf or wheelchair bound. It's like you're still part of the team. You're still, we can still put you in the game. and that's where acceptance kind of got started. And when it started from there, that's when I kind of just got so drawn to those same group of kids, and just wanted to, and just kind of, in a way, I wanted to be like them, kind of thing too, and wanting to follow their leads. And it's like I always have this code I always use loosely by myself. It's like you lead, I'll follow, and that was basically it back in middle school. It's not until intermediate school, which is like extension from elementary, where people kind of just start understanding the kids in a much more deeper state. Like it's like, oh, this is why this person is acting like this, because he or she has so and so, and that's where it gets kind of a little, in a way, unfair. It's like, can't we not talk about that and just go back to baseball? It's that kind of stuff too, and that's where it kind of change. Time changes, people change whenever they want to, and a lot of times I just don't want to change, but instead I want to expand. That's basically what it is, and that's the inspiration of becoming one, as a matter of fact, too, is not wanting to change but to expand.
Yeah, and I think that acceptance, as things started to transform for Tyler, even though Tyler in the classroom, as parents, we were dealing with Tyler headbutting other kids, biting other kids, chewing on staples,
eating nails for breakfast.
Eating nails. This standing on his desk and screaming and running out of the classroom. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to talk about that in the child perspective section. But one of the things that, as a parent, you really just yearn for your child or grandchild to just be accepted, right? Be loved, have friends. But as that progressed, clearly that gap was just, wider and wider as Tyler progressed into primary school and middle school and high school. And boy, I'll tell you, those were really, really challenging times. As parents, Tyler was on an IEP from age 3 all the way through actually his adult living program. So went through age 3 all the way through high school. He had a paraprofessional that was with him throughout school. And then also when you transitioned into the adult living program for 3 years, that, taught basic skills too. And that whole entire goal of that was to really develop this type of acceptance inside of a peer group. But there's this whole concept of trying to fix your child. And as a parent, when Tyler was diagnosed, it was with autism, it was kind of like a bomb went off. And, oftentimes it said, men have 2 emotions. We're either mad or we're hungry. And it was this, Tyler is different and is going to be different. And instead of celebrating those differences like I do now, back then it was, well, I just need to figure out how to fix Tyler. And the reality of it is there was nothing that needed to be fixed. In fact, I remember when Tyler was born, the doctor, came out and, he had not came out, it's just when Tyler was born and, had him there. he says, well, what do you think? And I said that he's absolutely perfect. And he was. I mean, he was just perfect, exactly the way that he was. He was beautiful. And that's exactly what I said, is that he is perfect and he is beautiful. And
yeah, I distinctly remember too. Even my mom told me that as well. It was like, even I'm thinking about it too. All of a sudden.
And I feel the same way today. Tyler is perfect exactly the way that he is. And, had I known then what I know now, I would have stopped a lot earlier in trying to fix Tyler. And while I'm very glad that we created this framework of success for him, it ultimately was Tyler that applied those things and ultimately took himself from being nonverbal into really being the amazing man that he is now, and writing now 2 books and owning a company called Autism Works that helps people, with autism, and ultimately allows us to share this with you too. So acceptance also as parents, this is having autism becomes very isolating because it was difficult, to take Tyler to the store, into the grocery store, to other people's homes. So as parents, we become very, very isolated, as our children are isolated as well from this acceptance. So how do we find acceptance in the community? Well, education, just like this, is absolutely key. Finding people in a support system, whether that be our family members or other parents that have children that are affected by autism. But sometimes, you're just hanging on by your fingernails. That's, when, Tyler's only form of communication was this just shrill shrieking until he was 6 or so. And it was just unnerving. But it was his frustration in trying to communicate. And maybe you can share a little bit about where that frustration came from, and just you trying to just be understood.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was just kind of thinking, it's one of those things where it's like, my dad wants to fix me, and at the same time, believe it or not, I also want to fix me, that kind of thing. It's like, just seeing how well we can do to work things out and all that kind of thing. And I have succeeded on some areas, but I still haven't really changed personality-wise or anything like that. We just had some adjustments that we need to work on. So, for example, with the whole shrieking and all that kind of stuff, I was just mostly frustrated because I was just misunderstood and just don't know how to properly communicate, and that's where it gets kind of just frustrating and all that kind of thing. I just don't know what to do. I felt lost. I felt like that's almost hopeless, that kind of thing. I say almost because I know that there's always going to be a way to communicate properly, like everyone else, and as you can see, I've already succeeded. So that was just basically the main reason why I got so obsessed, because just the whole idea of being misunderstood and just felt isolated. In fact, they call it autism for a reason. That's because the first part of the word, auto, is Greek for means self. So if you put it in terms of that, selfism, it becomes such a lonely experience in such a way too. Isolating. That's why there's the auto parts in autism, and it's one of those things where I always say that it's hard but never impossible. I always live by that quote secretly when it comes to just about anything. It's like it's hard but never impossible to accomplish.
And I think that was really Tyler's drive. And so as parents, how do you do that, right? It's really about encouraging your child, not discouraging your child, even though as parents, there's a lot of discouragement. And, if you look at, had I known then what I know now, as parents, I grew up in a military family, and there was this very like code of conduct, right? This is the way you acted as a child. And looking through that lens, that was the only parenting that I kind of knew of. And so, Tyler's behavior was either compliant or not compliant, and I did everything in my power to make it compliant. And it was just completely the wrong way to go about it. Tyler only had a certain amount of ability back then, and he honestly was trying his hardest. And I think that's a huge takeaway. As parents, we have to know, as grandparents, as caregivers, our children that have autism are desperate for our understanding. They're completely desperate for our love. They're desperate for our acceptance. They don't get accepted by society. So at the very least, they should be accepted at home. And that's then the confidence that allows them to build inside this whole framework of success. So the other, I think, big thing was what allowed you to build, allowed you to speak and really work through that. And I think the first step with that was sensory, and being able to get a handle on sensory. Why don't you share a little bit about how just sensory affected you, and especially when you were young, and then what happened as you started to get older?
Sure, absolutely. Well, for starters, I think I would have to come clean and say I am not wearing the correct shirt at the moment.
Oh, why is that?
Look at the patterns. It's too much.
Oh, you know what? That's a very interesting. That's an interesting observation.
Yeah. So you are wearing solid patterns, which are easier for the eyes. But for me, because for whatever reason, I insisted on wearing green. I didn't really think about the patterns at first until we just got live on the air. And this is really important too, because it's not just the ears that are also very sensitive. It's also the eyes that are very sensitive as well. It's like with ears, loud noises can be quite stimulating, but that's not all that's stimulating. It's also the eyes, that kind of thing too. Like for example, too many patterns or too many things that go one way or another, and all that kind of stuff. Like at the grocery store, it's like a whole bunch of colors and patterns everywhere you go. It's and people and crowded, and even the supermarket playing music up above. It's crazy. I guess that's kind of one of the main reasons why I kind of mostly stare up at the ceiling, so that there's not a lot of patterns, or just simply look down at the floor where there's not a lot of patterns as well, so that I don't have to deal with looking upwards and seeing all this chaos going around. So that's the whole pattern stuff. It was a challenge at the time anyway too, but then of course years go on, my eyes matured, and now I can handle all the patterns today.
Yeah. So so that's a great question. So we're going to again answer questions as we go through. So
we'll do our very best and swiftly as we can anyway too. So talking about a child's perspective and effective techniques. One of the things that I mentioned too was either look up or look down, and all that kind of thing, where there's not so much textures. And as for sounds, earbuds, or no, actually not earbuds, but earphones, they can work out pretty good too. Even if it's a certain song that you love to play over and over and over again, that's okay. Sometimes I do the same thing too. Sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point. So Tyler's comment about wearing the wrong shirt is for those that are watching that have autism. It can be very agitating because being able to see that, and depending on where your child or grandchild or the person that you care for may be on the spectrum, the first part is you have to desensitize sensory. You have to do it. So think about sensory input. It's our ears and our eyes, our smell, our taste, all those things can be completely overwhelming. And then ultimately that creates a meltdown. And those are tough days, without a doubt. We regularly experience that with Tyler, of course. And by the way, it was our fault. because we didn't watch the indicators that Tyler was going to melt down. He was on the way, which basically a meltdown is just complete sensory overload. So maybe you can explain what happens leading up to a meltdown, and then when you're actually in a meltdown, what's that like?
Well, leading up to it involves a lot of signs, kind of thing. Think of it as a bomb that's ready to go off, and if you're familiar with those Looney Tunes kind of thing, they always have that little fuse that trails for a lawn thing. Think of the fuse as like signs and indicating, saying that something is about to happen, and you gotta find some way to lick your fingers and get the fuse, pause the fuse off so that there's no destruction or anything like that. So signs includes what's that term called? Stimming kind of thing too, or
Stimming, yep.
yeah, stimming. Just trying to moving your body in a certain way too. Looking down and trying to avoid yourself from going any further. Even the simple act of running out of the classroom, that counts as a fuse, because it's like, I don't want to melt down here. I got to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So so think of it that way. When I ran out of the classroom, it was only for the safety of others,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked out pretty good. And even my parapro understood that too, and helped to kind of cope with that, while still going back to learning in a safe manner, kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and I think we have comments that are coming in too, and saying, "Hey, we can't sing Happy Birthday," and she's now 16.
Right.
There's again, going through all these different sensory things. So Tyler, right, still has sensory issues. Like you'll see even on webinars or when he's up speaking, the way that he managed those things is you can always tell, right? Because he'll play with the back of his neck, or sometimes he'll twist the hair on his arm. But he's also found socially acceptable ways to manage that. So what are some of the socially acceptable ways that you manage this sensory overload that comes in, so you don't get to the point to where you do melt down? Which by the way, have gotten progressively better, right? I mean, it would happen almost daily or every other day while we were trying to go through the desensitizing process, because we take them right up to the edge because we're trying to desensitize, and sometimes we didn't get it right. And then ultimately that resulted in a meltdown. But what do you do now to help you focus, your energy differently?
Well, one of the things I actually do is more like a eye fidget to me. And one of the things I would actually do in large speaking engagements is basically making sure that all the audience members are properly seen. It's like I'm scanning the area like a security camera kind of thing too. That makes sure I take the moment to see everyone's eyes, so that I don't feel like I'm staring at one place or another or anything like that. To me, that's like the most socially acceptable way to kind of deal with the whole thing. Sometimes I even just that you hardly would notice, but kind of just rubbing my fingers together, kind of thing too. Even at the side or anything like that. I like to be animated appropriately, that kind of thing, when I'm moving my hands and all that kind of thing, and just put on a appropriate show, that kind of thing, socially appropriate show, while doing the speaking engagements too, and. Because I like to move around and all that kind of thing too. That's so when you do it like that, it's socially appropriate, but it's also a way to fidget yourself into kind of just dealing with the whole thing, the whole situation.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because Tyler still, he's really, really good at eye contact, but that took him a long time, and really didn't get his eye contact probably until he was like 19 or 20.
I was I was even the most camera shy person too for a long time. That's why I took a college class that's all about acting in front of the camera. And it wasn't just because the idea of being a movie actor or anything like that. But basically, it's just simply to how to be more comfortable around the camera, and teacher kind of just said, think of the camera as someone else's eye, that kind of thing, and that really helped a lot too. So I'm not too nervous anymore.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing, right? So instead of looking at someone's eyes, he could just look at a single lens, and then that graduated to be able to look at people in the eye. And I do find it fascinating because he can get up and speak in front of 2,000 people, and as long as he doesn't look at someone in the eye, and that's that whole scanning of the audience, he's very, very comfortable doing those things. The other thing is Tyler has socially appropriate fidgets as well. Mm-hmm. So like he has a fit meter. It's a Nintendo fit meter that he'll fidget with pens. Yeah, that's the other thing you fidget with.
Pens, sometimes in the fabric of my shirts kind of thing too. It's kind of nice. And actually I still kind of use stones here and there too. Even out of the street, I kind of just pick up a rock and kind of just feel that and just throw it away when I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important because so as you're training your child, train them in this socially appropriate fidgets, right? So you're replacing items as well. And in fact, it's interesting. We have a whole program. Tyler has produced 100 hours of programming. It's almost kind of like the Netflix of autism, where he explains all of these things that happen. And we talk a lot about sensory and strategies for sensory, what happens during a meltdown, which is fascinating. And ask that question. We'll circle back to that. But again, Questions About Autism Answers at Work is really going to give you, again, kind of this Netflix of autism where you can pull down something that you're working on. Like we had a great question about, can a child with autism actually attend something like a Disneyland or an event? And in Questions About Autism Answers at Work, you share a fascinating story about kind of this crazy sensory thing that we did as far as going to the track. You want to share a little bit? Because this is interesting. I mean, this is as he was 13 or 14, really trying to push the sensory envelope. Didn't necessarily go so well, but yeah, I think the story is really good.
Oh yeah, I actually have it on the second book, Becoming One, about the racetrack. And not just any racetrack, but the drag race, basically. Not the fashion one, but the actual car drag race.
Yeah,
but it's really quite to me. It was like the ultimate boss battle of a video game kind of thing too. That's what it is kind of thing too. The final boss, that kind of thing. And the reason why is because it's like that's one of the most chaotic places that I can think of imaginable. Think of it. Just it's like Earth is basically rumbling from the ground, and it's like vibrations everywhere too. It's the noisiest cars imaginable, and we tried kind of just trying to do the most codes and the most plugs and most of everything, but it still ended up as a disaster. Yeah. And we were kind of had the thing where it's like Dad, what are you doing? You're trying to kill your son or something. But this was the turning point of that was that one day I had to drive the jet skis over to a certain place, and then hearing the jet skis, it wasn't as noisy as the drag races kind of thing too. It's kind of like getting a taste of the drag races first, and then everything else in comparison will not be as chaotic if you think of it that way. It's like getting dipping your toes into the hot tub before deciding if you want to go a full dip your full body into it.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you really listen to that, right? So I took Tyler, my son who has autism, to the drag races, which again, just like you said, I put tons of coats on him so that it would dampen the feeling, the rumbling. Mm-hmm. We had earplugs, we had earmuffs, and then we had, it's kind of like they were sealants, and then we put headphones over the top of that. but there's still the sights and the smell. And I think you lasted like 5 minutes, if even that, or maybe 1 run or 2 runs. And we had to leave because, but why I did that is because it was just this next step in sensory integration. And Tyler talks about the jet ski story. So Tyler, this was his first trip on the jet skis. And, we took him on the jet ski and we go zipping down the lake. And he got back to the dock and I'm just like, Tyler, how was that? Right. And I don't know, maybe you could pick up the story real quick. Yeah, because there's a point to it. There's a moral to this story.
Yeah, so think about this jet ski, cold water, the winds. We were basically riding the ocean, for goodness sakes. It's even underneath, going all the way to underneath the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, that kind of thing. It was intense, and I didn't wear a shirt either. I had a life jacket on, but for whatever reason, I don't like wearing shirts when I'm doing water stuff. And I was, I was freezing, but didn't want to, jeopardize the mission. so we made it to the docks. Dad was like, "How was it?" I was like, "It was like it's radical, dude." And it was awesome. It was amazing. And I was having so much fun. And then the next thing I did was at a very energizing adrenaline haze. The next thing I did was I went inside and then lost all my lunch in the bathroom and then collapsed in my bed.
Yeah. So threw up, went and had to spend the rest of the day and evening in bed. And here's why. So Tyler has the ability, as many of our children and young adults and adults with autism, to literally see everything that went by. If you've ever seen your child or grandchild go through and search, like on Google or YouTube or whatever, I mean, they go so fast, you can't even see it oftentimes. And that's because they have the ability to do all of this. And literally, Tyler was taking all of this sensory in, was processing it, but completely overloaded on that. So that's one version of meltdown. So another one of the questions was, do people experience meltdowns differently? And I think the question is when you were experiencing meltdown, were they different or were they all kind of the same? And then what happened when you melted down?
There was, I will say that meltdowns are both the same and slightly different on some areas too. But the main core concept of a meltdown is basically that you lose consciousness and some demon comes up and takes control over you. That's basically, that's how I kind of see it as well. It's like you don't know what's going on, just don't know what's right or wrong. And the next thing you see a giant mess all over the place. And I was like, who did this? And it turned out to be you. And then you have full of regrets and just don't want this to happen ever again. And but the different part is that it's not just the kicking and screaming or anything like that, but it's also even at that point where I threw all my playing cards at the wall because during high school and all that kind of stuff. It was I was just so angry at one time because I've got all these ideas of leadership and no one really gave a darn. So that's where I just kind of lost it and stuff too. I just felt like no one was listening. Felt like the ghost kind of thing. The phantom. It's like, do I even exist? That's where it gets kind of crazy here and there. But that's basically it. So that's why we I'm doing whole lot better these days too, because I'm a young adult. I don't do meltdowns anymore. I just get I don't do meltdowns. I just do what do I call it? It's like I do something that I do when I'm extremely hungry. let's just put it that way.
So so a couple of real takeaways there. Our children are not throwing fits, temper tantrums, any of those things. Our children with autism, our young adults and adults, they are just simply overwhelmed with sensory. And as parents, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're protecting that environment. And, over time, our children, as they're exposed to additional things, will be able to process more and more sensory. So yes, at some point, like Tyler, we actually did go back to the races, when you were, I think, 18 or 19, maybe 20 or so.
I think I was close to being 20 or something.
So yeah, 2021. And he actually could be able to be in the stands. And so it does happen, it does happen, but it's slow. And oftentimes, we live in such a point and click society that we want things to happen so quickly. But boy, it's a really real challenge there.
Every point and click, there's always going to be a load time.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we talk a lot about this, of course, we have a whole section on meltdowns as well, techniques, that I used as far as, hugging and holding Tyler, and all sorts of other things. And so if you feel like more information would help you on those specific topics, maybe something that you want to check out, we have a link there. You're welcome to purchase it. The value really is extraordinary because the information is so unique, and it gives you the first-person perspective about what it's like to have autism. There was some other really good. Oh, I'm sorry, Liv.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say we need to move forward to social acceptance, which we did on some areas too. So I think we did pretty well so far, just time-wise. So anyway, what were you about to say?
In fact, it's funny. We are 100% on the same page.
Yes.
so
I'm glad.
There were there's really good questions here about, hey, have you or do you go to therapy or get parenting coaching? How do you deal with people's ignorance about autism? What kind of support, for your mom and I? And and then also, did we have problems getting services? All of those are just fantastic questions. I'm gonna answer them briefly. But there's, again, whole sections in there on questions about autism answers that work. But the answer is yes, we were able to get services for Tyler. It took a lot of work. And the key principle here is to make sure that you develop a vested relationship with your school district. Tyler had a large group of people that worked with him, right? Occupational therapists, speech therapists. He had a parapro literally in the classroom his entire school career. We have counselors. We had certain types of transportation. He was removed from the classroom for sensory, both desensitization, and then when we knew, hey, he's near that meltdown. And so we would push and push, and we were 100% on the same page with teachers the vast majority of times. We had a notebook, a journal that went back and forth every day. So the teachers knew what happened at home, and we knew what happened in the classroom. All of those things are absolutely essential because that's ultimately what is going to help your child progress to independence. And think of it in terms of it's a 15-year journey, if not more, 18 years, depending on the school career, what other additional services may be available when your diagnosis happened. But think about it. If you put in the time right now, it's going to look radically different, when they age out of the system, at 19 or 20 or 21, depending on your particular state. But the work that you do now, I mean, if I knew then what I knew now,
game changer.
If you had asked me, my son is going to be an author of 2 books, one being a bestseller on Amazon for the last 5 years straight, and would own a company, Autism Works, and would speak across the world to people on the topic of autism. As a dad, I would have said, man, my child can do anything. But the reality of it is that there was some significant cognitive delays that we were told by therapists and teachers and doctors that Tyler would only be able to progress to a certain level. Well, I'm just here to tell you they were wrong. It's important to make sure that you're taking in all of that information, right? Take in the information from the doctors and from the therapists and from your school and your teachers. It's super important. But at the end of the day, you know what's best for your child. And as parents, our confidence is under attack. Always. It's under attack by friends and family. Again, well-meaning, don't get me wrong, but they're looking at it and saying, well, why don't you parent your child this way? And maybe it's teachers saying, well, you need to be doing this, or your child needs that, or they need prescription, whatever it may be. You have to take all of that information and take responsibility as a parent. And I get it. I get that sometimes you just literally can't go on one more minute because it's just so challenging, but you just got to hang in there. You got to hang in there because the ends are worth it. I mean, it's absolutely worth it. So finding that acceptance as a parent, oftentimes you can network with other families that are affected by autism as well. School district would help us do that. We do it discreetly. But the reality of it is getting help, we're all just hanging on with our fingernails. And so trying to help one another became very, very difficult as well. So yes, we did seek the help of counselors. We sought the help of friends, close friends that would just be there and sometimes just a listening ear, family members that really understood versus trying to fix or help us do things better. Those were some of the keys. And so you have to really build that support system around yourself. Very, very important for sure. What were some of the things that you did, for social acceptance as well? And actually, that's a great question too. That kind of goes in with that
For social acceptance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's I was just kind of going through some questions. One of them was how did you feel when you found out you had autism? Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of did mention at the beginning, but
we can go through it quick.
We can go through it real quick. It's basically just a flood of emotions, just a storm of anger, sadness, and depression, and rage, that kind of thing too. It was all over the place, and we felt like as a teenager, that's like the best time to officially figure it out, and then once you're a teenager, because hormones kind of develop, and it's best to just get them all out as much as you can at that time, and we did through proper activities that are athletic, like boxing, aikido, kendo, and then ultimately track, which I used to be a track star back in high school. Can run the 400 pretty well, and the 200 and 100 and the hurdles. It was a lot of fun, and that was like a healthy way of kind of just dealing with that, and then I felt socially accepted in the team, which happens to be the track team, and it was really nice. It was really good.
I think that's really it. Getting your child involved. Another key takeaway would be oftentimes schools have buddy systems, right? Where somebody who has autism or some other unique ability is paired with, again, we really try to avoid labels, but typically developing a person that really has their best interest, at heart. So you can do that, encourage people, encourage teachers and counselors and principals and vice principals to use that buddy system. That's really, really effective. That also helps the social acceptance. Another question, here as well, which is, have I written a book on how to parent? That's coming. I am definitely not a writer at all, but we've recorded, again, hundreds of hours of information just like this, and we're in that process of transcribing and ordering it together so that it does make sense. And I think people consume it differently. And I think that's a big thing about Questions About Autism Answers at Work, is that not only does it help parents and caregivers and grandparents understand what it's like to have autism from a first-person perspective, but when your child or grandchild, and we have many healthcare providers that use it to have their child or grandchild or adult with autism to just watch those things and listening to Tyler talk, is extraordinary because they all of a sudden realize they're not alone. And that's a huge gift that you can give to your child or young adult or adult or grandchild to just help them not feel so alone so they don't have to go through the depression and those kinds of things that you went through. I think about that.
Yeah.
If you had that, you would at least be able to start understanding yourself and self-care and those things too.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, this brings up to number 5 of our topics, and that is self-care.
Yeah.
So let's go right to it. The importance of validating your personal efforts, those who have autism and those who care for those who have autism. So let's get right to it. so I know self-care can be quite a topic to talk about. So how would you like to start off?
Yeah, I mean, self-care is an interesting one. So here's just some techniques. We get a lot of questions about potty training. There's actually on autismworks.com, there's going to be a new product release just specifically on potty training because this is a big, big issue. There are definitely some strategies that you can use in order to do that. A lot of it has to do with distraction. But if you think about it, it's sensory too. You know, when you have to void, you know, there's all sorts of different sensations going on. And that's why you see, your child may have impacted bowels, those kinds of things. And it's really, really important. We won't cover the topic of foods that's covered on questions about autism advances at work. But Tyler, for the first, 12 years of his life, ate 6 different kinds of foods. And there's some fantastic stories, but most of all, tips and tricks that you can use. But specifically on self-care, we would literally label everything. So in the bathroom, we had pictures with, what he needed to do. Like you have to get the washcloth out. You have to turn on the water. You have to wash your face. This is what you do when you're in the shower. This is the order that you do them in. In the kitchen, we said, hey, this is how you get cereal and pull milk out. And ultimately, he ended up learning, but it took that repetition over and over. And we've actually got a whole section and question about autism answers that work because it's just, we can't give you 100 hours worth of material in an hour webinar. But, just how you use those things to start developing these categories and these routines that allowed you to have that independence and allowed you to be able to care for yourself. And that was a big deal, by the way. I mean, cleanliness and all of that, especially through the teen years, those were big issues for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was pretty amazing. It's a way that I was able to, do things without even having to be reminded. I just remind myself.
And even to this day, even his office activities every day, he's got a list, it actually has pictures on it. Is, hey, here's all the things, you got to ship your books, autograph your books, make sure your books are shipped.
Just a little extra
social media.
Just a little extra reminder that way. Yeah, that way I kind of know what needs to get done, the major priorities that are in there.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's an interesting one too as well.
Yeah, this one reads, how is it moving from being nonverbal to verbal? What revelation or emotions did you feel? It was quite a major game changer. I felt so excited. I was like, oh my goodness, I can actually communicate properly like everyone else. It's I think the revelation there was more like, having the chance to make friends at school and all that kind of thing. That was basically the main revelation for me anyway. And it's kind of worked on some areas. Not the way I hoped it would. We were just mostly acquaintances and just more schoolmates that get along. But that was pretty much it. And I would say that's good enough for me.
Yeah. And I think, too, this story is a difficult one, when Tyler tells it because it's, and hopefully I'll be able to get through it. But one of the, his very first things that he wrote, because he couldn't speak, and actually maybe you can tell the story because I don't think I can make it through that one. The first 2 things I really said in elementary school was 2 things that says, help me. And those are basically it.
I didn't say anything specific on what I need that needs to be helped. I just know that I cannot do this journey on my own. So I just pick up my red crayon and kind of just drew big letters and said, "Help me," to the teacher, like parapro, and this was basically the moments where they understood and wanted to do everything they could to get the help I need. And I did all I could in my ability and my power to go through, because that's the secret to a lot of the success in having autism. Is it's not just your team that's working on it; it's also you that makes the call. You have to decide if you want to move forwards and to be a team player, and then sometimes even doing things that you don't feel very comfortable doing, but you want to do it anyway for the sake of a challenge, for the sake of a good challenge, that is.
Yeah, and as parents, right, we're desperate to help our children, but oftentimes we just don't know what to do to help them. I mean, we're helpless. And there's so much that I wish I would have known that now I know. I would have done things so different. There's a whole section in Question About Autism Institute that work about eating and food and just going through those things. And I think there's a really interesting question that kind of goes into this as well, where it says, her son gets extremely angry when they try to discuss being on the autism spectrum, and completely shuts that conversation down.
Hey, I was like that too.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe you should share just a little bit about that, because I think the tips on how to break through this they're essential. We have a whole series on that as well in Question About Autism, but give some tips and why that happens.
Yeah, I was definitely like that. I don't really like that conversation that much back then, and it's like I don't want to be known for someone who has autism. I just want to be Tyler for once, and that's basically kind of the main thing. It's like people, children would feel in a way ashamed for having whatever this is, and I can totally understand why they feel that way, because they just want to be a part of society, and I can understand why it's so hard. So instead, what if we just take the label autism out of the conversation, mm-hmm. and just focus mainly on hey, I do know that you need some help on some areas, so let's work that through together, and that's when we kind of made an arrangement with the counselor named John Whitehead.
Yeah.
And having someone else to talk to, just simple conversations on the first starts, get to know John Whitehead, get to interact, and then eventually it comes to the point of sharing whatever is on your mind. It doesn't have to be about autism; it can just be about anything, and then that's when it slowly goes down to understanding, what the situation is and what we can do to help in that little situation. Even be opening to saying something along the lines of, I don't think my parents really get me that much. It's that kind of stuff that's really comfortable to talk to your counselor that way.
Yeah, and I think Tyler's had the same counselor since you were 8 years old, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I still go up and go talk to him too, even to this day too. I even got a text from him saying that hey, how'd you like to come down and go for what do they call it, shoot, I'm losing words here. A check-in kind of thing, too, I guess you can say.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so oftentimes we as parents, right, we're not the best people to talk about those things. There's quite a few comments about labels. So at Autism Works, right, we don't talk in terms of disabilities. We talk in terms of unique abilities, and we really are out. I mean, literally, that's part of our 10-year goal, is to transform the conversation from one of disability into unique ability, because I guarantee you, no matter how profoundly your child or grandchild or the person you care for is affected by autism, I don't care if they are 3 years old or 30 or 60 years old, every one of them have a unique ability. And as parents, it's our job to find that unique ability. We can sit and work on disability all day long, and I can go out and swing a club at 1,000 golf balls a day, and I'm just going to only be so good of a golfer. It's just not one of my natural abilities. And it's the same with our children. And I think inside of Questions About Autism Answers That Work, I have several sessions in there that help you understand how to find your child's unique ability. And once you leverage that, for Tyler, it was writing. And, Tyler's story is no better or no worse than your child's story. It's just one person's, it's that whole thing, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so, that really becomes one of those key things that just find your unique ability of your child. And if you can do that, that will be the greatest advocate of them. And really, really watch the labels. Labels, you have to have a diagnosis. I get it, autism deficit disorder, PDD, NOS. Really, there's only one code, and it's called autism. Great, let's get over it. Let's get into action about unique ability.
Yeah,
I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely.
So as we're, wrapping up, and again, I wish that we could there's literally 500, 600 questions here. I'm so sorry that we're not able to get to all of them. We will be having future webinars. And again, that's why Tyler's recorded 100 hours of different programming. If you're looking for this, another thing that we're doing,
we read every single one, just to let you know.
Yeah, we actually do. We had posted a survey, and there was over almost 1,500 responses, and we literally do look at every one of those. And what we're doing, for the people who purchase Questions About Autism Answers That Work, we're also starting a weekly coaching program. And so it's going to be much smaller group, than this. Probably break it down into 20 or 30 people so that you can get all of your questions answered from a first person perspective. And so we're just doing that, for the people who purchase on this webinar. And so I'd encourage you to check that out, Questions About Autism Answers That Work, and it'll just give you more of this. But, whether you purchase that or not, make sure you get a support system, right? Check out it's free YouTube channel. Check out, we have a private Facebook group that's got, 6,000 or 7,000 members in it that are all supporting one another. There's free resources on the website. But, if you want to take that to that next level, we'd encourage you to do that. This is a product that we've had for some time, and we've never offered kind of a private coaching program along with that. That private group coaching, I think, is, again, it's going to be completely private. People want to have access to other people's information, so we want to maintain that confidentiality there as well. But again, I just want to say thank you. Any closing comments, at all on that as well?
Well,
what we're up to?
Is it all right if I answer this just really briefly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just one more question. It says, how did you start writing?
It's a great question.
It's a great question. The first things first, it was cry for help. That's when I kind of started writing. The simple 2 words, help me. And help me. I just, just said that because I just wanted some help. And I figured that was a breaking point to me, thinking, hey, maybe I should just be a writer, just to get those words out before I start speaking full sentences, kind of thing. And that was basically it. Next to recess and physical education, and because I really enjoy sports, but the secret thing I really like to do is just writing. Just writing whatever comes to my mind, and also I'd like to write stories too. It's really I mentioned quite a few on the 2 books where I insert like little stories that I kind of like to share just for the fun of it. So that's it comforts me. It's just a way to be in my own little world, and then sharing it with others, that kind of thing, in the writing kind of sense too. So and I kind of still do it even to this day. Just kind of fun to come up with stories and come up with whatever comes up.
Yeah.
I'm a writer.
It's such a cool thing too. So if you get a chance to go to Autism Works, check out your blog blog, because you write regularly there. And then two, one of the things that we get so many books sent to us from writers who also have autism, that we've decided that probably sometime in like July, August, we're going to start kind of a publishing company, I guess if you call it that. We'll see where it grows. But, we understand how to be able to, get books in the hands of people that really, truly can benefit from them. So if you have writers in your family or, children or adults or young adults that have written stories, we'd love to see those. Any way that we can help with that, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah. All right. And that just pretty much wrap things up. Just want to give a huge shout out to Peter and Joy Ross. I really do appreciate. We really appreciate it. So shout out to you folks out there. And thanks for tagging along with us. It's really nice.
And to each one of you, as well, we just so look forward to being able to work with you and continue to bring information that hopefully will make autism more workable in your life.
Yep, we're just here to help. That's all we're here to do. And feel free to reach us out anytime.
Great. Take care. We'll see you again soon.
See you again soon.
I lose my breath whenever I see you.